So my name is Ed Donnelly. I work for AT&T. I have a job that's called the Director of External Affairs. It's kind of a combination of like government relations and community relations, and my colleagues, Kevin Grant and Mike Hardigan are here also. So what this presentation is, one other kind of housekeeping issue. This is being filmed for the local cable station. So we have a little disclosure here. There's a chance we may take photos as well. If you don't want your photo taken for us, just give us a heads up. We'll take you away and not take your photo. Luckily, I did go through full hair and makeup this morning. I have to have this back. I rented this too, so I got to have this returned by 10 tomorrow. So you're getting the full treatment from us today. You're getting the full experience. But this is a program that AT&T is doing. I've worked at AT&T for about 7 years. We've been doing this across the state. What we're really trying to do is help senior citizens and older Americans kind of become more comfortable with technology. So we've actually named this presentation Connecting with Confidence because we're trying to get folks' confidence up, right? For a lot of people, even folks younger, they didn't grow up with technology. It's a new thing. It's really kind of like learning a foreign language in a lot of ways. It's very hard. It's very overwhelming. And just so to kind of level set, I'm an attorney by trade. I'm not, if you came here expecting some like computer scientist who's gonna like knock your socks off, you're at the wrong place, because that's not gonna be the case. But what we tried to do was really make the presentation very digestible, very accessible, and trying to cover the key topics. And I kind of heard some questions earlier. The other thing to know is that although AT&T is putting this presentation on, we've built this program so that it's applicable across all providers. There may be some nuances, and we'll try to flag them where like it's specific to our company, and maybe you would have to check with your own company. But for the most part, all of the information we present is agnostic as to carrier or technology. We see this as our responsibility to be good corporate citizens in the places where we do business and try to help with some of the pressing technology issues that we see kind of every day in society. So with that kind of housekeeping done, we're gonna jump in a little bit. As I said, the program's called Connecting with Confidence. We've broken it down into kind of two parts, really, right? So the first part, we got through the introduction unscathed, so that's good. Connecting with savvy. So one thing I've found very interesting is when I started this presentation about 7 years ago, there'd be a room about this size with folks, maybe about 30 people, and I would say 3 had a smartphone, 10 had a flip phone. Yes, ma'am.
Does this pertain only to the internet today, or does it also pertain to the telephone?
It's both.
Lines?
Yep, it's both. Yep. Okay. And so there would be about 3 people with smartphones, maybe 15, 20 people with flip phones, and the rest of the folks didn't have anything. They just kind of came because I had brought donuts, or they wanted to hear my bad jokes, or whatever it was, right? So it was kind of a hodgepodge. But what we've seen, maybe since COVID, maybe since around the last few years, those have almost flipped on its ear. Like, how many folks here have a smartphone? So it's the whole room, right? So we've really seen that kind of flip on its ear. And so that's presented a host of issues, and that's what we're trying to tackle today. The first one, the Connecting with Savvy piece, we actually are gonna explain to you a little bit more about how cell phone plans work, like how they work, what are the cost drivers, how can you be a savvy consumer with wireless, because sometimes folks don't totally understand how the phone plans work, and then maybe you're paying for too much. It's kind of like buying clothes. You don't wanna be wearing clothes that's too big, clothes that are too small. You wanna find the one that's the right fit for you. So then the next part, we call Connecting with Vigilance, and that's kind of in 2 parts. So the Connecting with Vigilance, that gets into more of the cybersecurity stuff. And we're gonna talk about that both from like a phone wireless standpoint, as well as if you have home internet or a landline cable. And that we are gonna deal with sort of using the internet safely, like passwords, secure networks. And then the other part of it, we're gonna spend some time covering like the scams, where people are trying to get at you and how to avoid those. So, and throughout that, we're gonna try to give you some tips and tricks. So, you may not be able to believe this, but I did this slide myself. It's a little rudimentary, but I don't wanna take a victory lap, but this was me. So the first few times I did the presentation, it was like very doom and gloom, and I kind of was depressing myself as I was talking about the internet and technology and everything. And so what I really wanted to do, that's like the left side, like this storm like today, where basically the entire spring where it's rained. I want us to be moving to the right side, where we're kind of using technology as a tool to make our lives better, rather than something that's just jamming us up and causing more aggravation and headaches. And the good news is this second, well, it's not a two parts, right? We're going to try to just, rather than sit here and give you every terrible scenario that could occur, we're really going to try to help change your thinking a little bit around how technology works and give you kind of some of the foundational issues so that you can apply them across different things no matter what the situation is. And the other piece here that I think is helpful is that the good news is that you don't need a PhD from some crazy school in computer science. Like, a lot of your common sense is going to be your best friend and something that you can rely on as you're dealing with these things. So we're trying to take the temperature down a little bit. It's a super overwhelming topic for people. It gets overwhelming for me. It gets overwhelming for people that haven't used it a lot. And so we just kind of want to go in with a little bit more, like less of an overwhelmed feeling about how technology is and how these scams work. So diving right into it here, connecting with savvy. How can we be a savvy consumer in the digital space? It's really, there's a little bit of homework here. I know maybe some of you haven't had homework in a few years, but there's a little bit of homework in that you have to do a little bit of shopping for competitive prices. The good news about the wireless marketplace is that, you know, I do this presentation all over Massachusetts, and having worked in different spaces, like there are towns and cities, or not cities, towns in Massachusetts, they may not have more than one gas station. They may not have more than one store. The good news about the wireless industry is that you have at least three large competitors competing for your business all over the state. So the benefit there is that benefits you as a consumer, because we are fighting with each other every day to get you as a customer. Now, that means that there's some options for you, but the problem is you have to do a little bit of homework and figure out how that works. But you need to know what the lesson is in the first place so that you can do the homework, right? So that's kind of what we're going to talk about a little bit here. So the first part is shopping for competitive prices. But like I said, you can't really shop for competitive prices if you don't know what you're looking for, right? And that's what I want to spend a little bit of time talking about. And the key thing here, you know, back in the day, before I certainly was working at AT&T, you'd get charged per text message or per minute or all these other things. That sort of has gone away in a lot of cases. And really what the issue is now is really around data. That's really what drives a lot of the costs, and that's really the thing that you want to be mindful of. And it's actually relatively straightforward. There's data limits, and then there's unlimited data plans, right? But we want to spend a little bit of time talking about data consumption and what data is. Does anyone have a guess at what data is on your phone? So data is basically whenever you're using your phone for something really other than talking or texting. Texting is still kind of in play, but really, if you're using your phone to check the weather, read the newspaper, do email, watch a video, anything like that, you're connected to the, not to Wi-Fi. If you're connected to, like, if the top of your phone, we're gonna go over this in a minute, but if you're using the phone company's equipment to do all of that, you're using your data. Now, again, you're gonna be shocked to hear this. I did this slide also. And because we're here Cohasset, you know, summer's getting warmed up, I like to use the analogy of like a bucket of sand. That's kind of like your data. So depending on what plan you choose, it's a different size bucket. If you're on an unlimited plan, that bucket is never ending with sand. You can make sand castles with your kids and grandkids all day long because that sand's not going to run out. But every time you're using your phone to do something that's not talking, you're dumping sand out of that bucket. And depending on what you're using it for, it's a bigger amount of sand coming out. So like watching videos is usually for our purposes, the biggest thing that's using that data. That's taking big dumps of sand out of that bucket. Whereas something a little more mild like email, checking the weather, something like that, not quite as aggressive with the sand coming out. Now, like I said, those bucket comes in different shapes and sizes for plans. Unlimited plans, that sand, you can do whatever you want. That sand's not going anywhere. Limited plans will kind of run against the plan how much data you're using with your different behaviors. So the thing that you can do as a consumer is get a sense of how much data you're using on a monthly basis, right? And that's something you can talk to the company about, call customer service, try to figure out what your data consumption is. You can find it on your device in certain cases as well. So there's different ways to do it, and then try to work with the companies or get a sense of what you're using. You don't want to be on an unlimited plan if you're using hardly any data, because unlimited plans are typically the most expensive, right? And at the same time, if you're using a ton of data, if you're like one of my AP students that's going around and using your phone for everything, you don't want to be on a limited plan because that could be costing you money as well with overages and things like that. So you have to kind of understand what you are as a consumer and then take that information and apply it to your personal situation. Now, there's also ways that you can stretch that data out a little bit, right? And that's like, how many folks here have like a home internet? Okay, so here's another way that you can do that, right? Basically, the data that you're using, whenever you're using your phone for something other than talking, you're connecting to the internet somehow, right? Again, I like simple analogies. It really comes down to, if you think of it as a road to get to the internet, whose road are you using? Are you using the phone company's road, or are you using your cable company or your home internet road, right? And the way you can tell is if you take your phone out and you look in the top right corner, that's going to tell you whose road you're on. So if you take out your phone, you're going to see like letters and numbers like 5G, 5GE, 5G plus, LTE. You're not going to really see 3G anymore. If you see those letters and numbers in the top right corner, that means you're using the phone company's roads. That means that you're going back into that bucket of sand and taking sand out when you use it. If you see this other symbol, this old radar symbol, that means you're connected to something other than the company's roads. You're either using a public Wi-Fi that might be around, or you're using your home internet. And we're going to talk LTE, that means you're on your phone company. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute when we get into the cybersecurity portion of the program, but that's just a way to think about the data and the data consumption, how you're using. So if you're home and you have home internet, you really should, if you're worried about your data consumption, you could switch over to using your home internet and the Wi-Fi connection there, right? And toggle it on and off. Yes, sir?
Are you saying on the right side? On mine, it's the left.
It could be the left. This was a screenshot on my device. So wherever it appears, it's going to be in the top. So LTE or the radar symbol. So that's a way you can stretch out your data. So if you're on a limited plan, but you're mostly using your phone at home, maybe that's okay because you're relying on your home internet to provide that road to the internet when you're using your phone to connect. So those are the types of strategies and techniques you can use to try to be a more kind of savvy consumer, or try to make yourself get a little more value out of your device or whatever you're using. If you're the same type of person who doesn't have a home internet, then you have to be mindful of that as well. Okay, so if there are no questions, we're going to sort of transition quickly into more of the cybersecurity the thing where we talk about connecting with vigilance. Connecting with vigilance. Why do we need to be concerned about safety when we're online? We're sharing personal information that we would want to keep private. The fraudsters are out there. They may be trying to gain access. Now, we want to make sure that we're doing it safely. And now we go back to this wireless symbol, the Wi-Fi symbol here. Whoops. I'm still on my learner's permit on this, sorry. So basically, these are not all created equal. Some of them are password protected and very secure. Some of them are public and open, and those are less secure, because what it means is when you're transmitting, when you're on that road transmitting information, it's like, how secure is that road? If people can see into it, they're going to be able to see the data that you're transferring if you're using a public, non-password protected Wi-Fi connection. Now, the way I like to think about it, again, simple analogies, is you're basically protecting your home, right? Like, you wouldn't put a sign on your front door that says, okay, cash is in the underwear drawer, like, take the silver, that's the good stuff, you know, the jewelry box, like, it's the second layer, that's the really nice stuff. And with the door unlocked, like, you wouldn't leave like a treasure map on your front door. And that's really the way you need to think about kind of protecting your information online and making sure that you're securing things. And we're going to cover that a little bit more. So cybersecurity, you're going to hear that word. It's really making sure that your personal data is not accessible to others, making sure your devices work properly from malware. We're going to cover that in a little bit. It's really just kind of protecting, locking your door, making sure you don't have sort of that treasure map on your front door with a wide open option. Okay, now we still leave this in here. It's less common. We've covered the sort of the road analogy, right? We're on a safe and secure Wi-Fi. Let's actually go back 1 second. The one thing I want to talk about briefly here is like I like to lay out some scenarios, right? So let's say you're like at a coffee shop, or there may even be public Wi-Fi here. If it's not password protected, what that means is that it's not necessarily secure to be putting banking information out there and purchasing something, putting your social security number into a website. Like that is the type of activity we would rather not be doing on a public unsecured Wi-Fi. If you're on a public Wi-Fi with its password protected, that's better. It's not perfect, but it's better, right? And the steps that folks will take to try to trick you is really remarkable. They'll create fake Wi-Fi networks with names that you think look legit. Like if you're at, wherever, they'll say like, oh, like for the example we've heard is, certain hotel pools, they'll say like, oh, like, hotel pool, and they'll think that you'll think it's attached with the hotel, but it's really not. Like that's the level of sophistication that we're sometimes dealing with. So we want to make sure, like for me personally, I'm not doing anything with my personal information unless I'm at my home on my own personal Wi-Fi, which is password protected that no one knows except like my friends and family who aren't in the house. Yes, ma'am.
What about charging stations, public charging stations? I've heard that's a way to get into your phone.
Yeah, that I'm not quite as familiar with that. That, like, you mean like just like plug to charge your
I've
phone?
heard they have these convenient
Yeah,
charging
that's.
stations.
I think that's something you would want to be mindful of. It could be. I'm not an expert in that type of stuff,
Okay.
but just generally, I'm skeptical of things. So that would
I see
be.
they're just disappearing.
Yeah, it's definitely something you got to be careful of. So, again, going back to the driving analogy, a slightly different version. I think of using the internet, again, you want to be on a nice, safe, secure road, like a nice password-protected Wi-Fi, and you want to make sure you're on a secure website as well. That's kind of like the car. You don't want to be driving around like the car I drove around in high school, which was a little bit, maybe not totally the most legit car you've ever seen. So the way you're going to look for that is two things. You want to look for, and these don't always appear, and most times if you're using a legitimate website, you're going to be in good shape, but you want to see either a padlock or this HTTPS. The S is key also. That shows that there's some security protocols in place with the website. Most websites have that now. We've had this in this presentation for years, and we just like to remind people, just so they're mindful of what kind of websites they're on and that they look legitimate. Now, I alluded to this earlier. This is the most annoying part of the presentation by far. We're talking about passwords. So if you thought I was going to come in here and say, hey, don't worry about your passwords, not a big deal, ignore it when they tell you to change it. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So the reason why the passwords are so key is that that's your best bet at securing your accounts, is having a good, strong, robust password. I don't know if you've noticed this, but the websites are requiring you to do more and more with your passwords now, longer, more characters, uppercase, lowercase, all these different things, and there's a reason for that, and that's because, the hacking that's occurring is targeting these types of kind of entry points with your login credentials. And so you really need to make sure that your passwords are very secure. Now, like I said, super annoying. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that is really the key thing. But we're going to talk a little bit about passwords now, just because it's worth kind of mentioning and thinking through it a little bit. The key thing here is a strong password is one that's hard to guess, right? But how do you come up with a password? How do you make it strong and secure? So the tips here, don't use common words like password. Unfortunately, they have guessed that people use that. Don't include personal information. Like back in the day, like the social security number used to be like the driver's license number. That can't, like, don't put your social security number in as your password. That's just asking for problems. Don't use the same password on multiple accounts. Again, emphasizing that this is the most annoying part of the presentation. You want to kind of mix and match your passwords. So for example, like I have one password for my banking stuff. I have one password, a different type of password for my email, a different type of password for all my kids' sports leagues that I have to log into, like all the different things. Like I try to bucket them in my brain by topic, which again is an uphill battle, but to make it a little different, because otherwise, if you get hacked in one spot, you could be getting hacked everywhere. So that's kind of the key thing. And then obviously the more robust the passwords are kind of in the financial space, probably the better.
The
Or
problem with that is remembering all the
100%, right there with you. I told you it was annoying. The other thing here that that's crucial for passwords, you don't want to share them, right? Again, maybe if you have a trusted person in your life that's helping you manage things, or you're a child or whatever, that we can maybe bend the rules a little bit with that. But passwords need to be controlled, and we're going to cover that a little bit in when we talk about the scams that come in, but you really want to be protecting your information. We want to make the passwords as long as we possibly can without not being able to remember them. Now, the other thing that we've started sharing with people as a technique is kind of using like phrases to remember, or as a password to make it easier to remember. Like maybe there's a familial phrase or something like that that you have. So for some reason, I didn't do this slide, but they basically said like cows help make cheese would be the example of like a phrase that you could remember, that might help, right? So something along those lines, because obviously this kind of gibberish up here, this is going to be really, it's hard to hack into, but it's also very hard to remember, right? Unless that happens to be some weird combination of like your initials and birthdays that you can remember. I personally couldn't, but that's the type of thing. Like there's some other approaches, but that's something like short phrases could also be a way you could start looking to do strong passwords. Yes, ma'am.
So, is it safe to save your passwords on your phone, like you have that password place?
Yeah, I think it depends. It kind of depends from app to app. I tend to not do that and just try to hope I can remember it, and if not, I'll just reset it via email. I just get very, having done all these. Yeah, exactly.
So,
I'm not really an expert on how those things work, so I don't really tend to talk about them that much in these presentations, but the more, you don't want to be like writing down your passwords and leaving them next to your devices. You certainly don't want to be, some phones come with like a little pocket right here. You certainly don't want to be sticking it in there. That could be really bad. You want to make sure you have, for your smartphones, I hope everyone has like a lock screen that you have to put the password in. Those are the things you want to make sure you're doing. Like you do have to be a bit more vigorous in your password life now, unfortunately.
so on the lock screen, is it better to have a password or to do your face?
I don't know if there's a better option. I know I do both, so it kind of depends. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about so what we did with, those are sort of like what we can do proactively to make sure we're doing things online safely, just in our day-to-day lives without anyone bothering us, right? Now we're going to get into a bit when people start bothering us and these scams come in and they're more kind of proactive. And the general thing we're going to be talking about now is the term that's used is called phishing. So while it's spelled a little differently, it's that same concept that basically these fraud, kind of con artists, scam artists are basically trying to see if anyone's going to bite. They're kind of putting out putting out a line, seeing what they're going to get, and maybe kind of pick up some personal information that way. The thing about this is that it kind of dovetails with spoofing. And so spoofing is the approach where you're trying, the folks on the other side that are trying to execute the scam are making things look or sound very official and legit. They don't want to raise your concerns or suspicions because then you're less likely to give them your information, right? So if I just walked up to you on the street and said, okay, I need your mother's maiden name, your social, if you could throw your credit card number in there, that'd be great too. Any other personal information, you would tell me to get lost, right? But that's effectively what these scams are trying to do. They're trying to lower your defense so that you're more likely to give up that information. So we're going to go over like kind of how this stuff works and how you can identify things and sort that stuff out. But that's basically the premise. They're walking up to you as a stranger saying, hey, give me all your personal info so I can go make your life miserable and try and steal your credit. So we're going to try to figure out ways to avoid that. And again, relying on kind of our common sense and some of the tricks we're going to go over. So again, the phishing scams take many different forms, and we're going to cover those, but it's all the same concept, right? They're trying to get you to give up your information. So this is what we're going to start to do when we're starting to sense that there's kind of a scam afoot. Have you heard of the person? And we're going to go over some examples. Have you heard of the person or organization? Can you tell who the email message is from or the phone call is from? Does the email have mistakes? Are there any retired teachers in here by any chance? So you're going to have a field day with this. Are they asking for your information? That's actually the biggest one. That's the one that kind of sneaks in there. I think we should probably put that at the top, but that's really the biggest thing. Controlling the flow of your own personal information, if you can do that effectively and sense when they're trying to throw that kind of flow off, you're going to be in great shape. Are they trying to rush you into a quick action? That can be both positive and negative. Hey, quick, you got to call me and give me your bank account info so I can wire this $30,000 for no reason into your account. Or the grandparent scam that we're seeing a lot of is, hey, grandma, it's Joey, I'm locked up in a foreign prison, like you need to send bail money. Like, it's the same vibe, right? They're trying to rush you into quick action so that you forget all these wonderful tricks that you learned at the AT&T presentation and you act on emotion rather than some of the tools that we're giving you. Then the last one, common sense is our best friend. Is it too good to be true? Again, I'm bringing some bad news to you. They're not giving away free money on the internet, much like they're not giving away free money in real life. So all the rules that apply in real life are going to apply on the internet as well. Okay, so have you heard of the person or organization? This takes different forms, but what we did here, it's a little blurry, but this is like just a screenshot of an old version of our AT&T website, right? So the thing you want to look for on a website, if you get directed, is right up here, the address bar. That they cannot fake. If it's like att.com, that's what you want to be looking for. If it's a company you want to do business with, they will have a legitimate website with a relatively simple address bar. When you do searches, you might get sent other places. So no matter what happens, you want to check that bar. If you see like variations of it that don't quite make sense, maybe take a step back and make sure you're in the right place. But that is the key thing, is going to be that address bar. Or if someone calls and they say, oh, this is the, Make-A-Wish Patrolman Association of the, and they blend things together. It's like, wait, what are we talking about here, right? So make sure you're familiar with who it is you think you're interacting with. Okay, can you tell who the message is from? How many folks have had kind of these crazy junk emails? How many folks have email that they use somewhat regular, right? Yeah. So the trick here is that you can fake kind of like what's over here on the left-hand side. That can be manipulated. The rest of this stuff cannot be manipulated and have the email really still work in most cases. So that's really where you want to look. Here it's obviously chaos, right? It's a crazy, chaotic thing to the left side of the @ and then the other side of the @ says googlegroups.com. And then you look down here and it's talking about PayPal. The stuff isn't matching up, right? They're trying to trick you by saying, oh, it's PayPal, something we've heard of, with all this other chaos that makes no sense, right? So, and the way you can do that, sometimes that doesn't always pop up. If you're on your email, you can go and just kind of click on it or hover over it, and it'll usually drop down, and you can see that information if it doesn't appear. Because it could just be that account that pops up or someone's name or whatever, and it looks legit, and then you kind of look into it, and it obviously becomes a bit more obvious that it's not who it says it's supposed to be from. Okay, again, are they asking for your information? Now this can be done kind of subtly as well. Like it can be straight up like, what's your bank account, which we'll talk about in a minute, or it can be a little more subtle. So in this example, it's a little more subtle, right? If you read through it, they're saying, oh, your account's been restricted, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. And then there's a button on the bottom that says log into the PayPal account. If you click on that button, do you think you're going to a PayPal account? No, you're taking a one-way ticket to having your credit messed with and having to be on the phone with people for hours trying to unmess it up, right? So that's the key thing. It can be done subtly as well as very overtly. Does the email have mistakes, right? Companies like AT&T, we have a very robust proofreading operation. So when we send things out, there's not going to be common grammatical error, or there shouldn't be. Grammatical errors, spelling errors. And it's kind of like the same technique that like my kids are in elementary school, like read out loud, right? Read what you wrote out loud and see if it makes sense or sounds right. If you do this, first of all, your PayPal account has been temporarily restricted. Account spelled incorrectly. You were recently asked to take action on PayPal account. Looks like we didn't. We found suspicious activity. Like you kind of find these spelling errors. You find this second to last sentence, right? To maintain account, which is again spelled incorrectly. Security. Please confirming. Provide the documents for your identity. It's like what am I reading here, right? Like they're trying to make it sound so formal and fancy and secure, but when you look at it, like this is nonsense, right? So that's the kind of technique you can do to try to figure out is this a legitimate operation or not. Okay, are they trying to rush you into quick action? We covered that briefly, right? Right here, congrats, we're gonna give you this $750 Cash App gift card. Wonderful, click on this link, confirm it. You don't wanna do that, right? And again, we can use the tricks we just learned. When we go up here, that says Cash App, but then none of this other stuff says Cash App here, and that needs to all kind of match up, right? When it doesn't match up, that's when you know there's something afoot. Is it too good to be true? These kind of dovetail of it, right? They're not giving away $750. Like, it just, again, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. If you guys find out places where they are giving it out, I'll give you my email later, my phone number. You can send them over to me too, okay? But it's just not going to happen. So again, kind of going over this stuff, another way of thinking about it. We don't want to be giving our personal information. We don't want to reply or engage with anybody, whether it's via email or phone calls. We don't want to be clicking any links or buttons. We don't want to download files or attachments. We're going to cover that in a minute. We do want to be skeptical. We do want to read emails carefully. We do want to look up information on your own. So we're going to pause for a second to just kind of combine the looking up information on your own and giving away personal information, right? So this again goes back to controlling the flow of your information. The thing you're going to see, like for example with the phone calls, right? Sometimes they'll try to trick you into thinking that they're a legitimate player and they're really not, right? They may say, okay, well, we need you to give us your bank account info. It's like, hey, it's the bank. There's a problem with your account. That's a panic for most people. It's a panic for me. It's a panic for everyone. So, okay, now what? They'll, all right, well, give us your bank account number and we'll sort it out for you. But yeah, like, no, right? Hang on. There you go. That's the whole point. We want to verify the information on our own, right? You want to take,
When they say that, no way.
absolutely. You guys are,
Hang up and say, I'll call my bank.
so I have some bad news. You guys are coming on tour with me. So you guys seem to have it under control. So
The other thing is,
you're,
they ask if, are you, whatever your name is, your name Jill? And my name might be Jill, but I'll say, nope,
yep.
nope,
Yeah.
not me.
Yeah, and that's a nice blend of you don't want to engage with the folks on the other end. But the way you want to do it is if they say, oh, there's a problem with your account, they don't identify your bank, they don't identify your information, you hang up the phone and you call your financial institution back at the number that you don't just call back the number that called you, right? You go to like your credit card or your wherever you might find your bank statement, whatever it is, and you call that number back and you ask them, right? Now here's the other thing, and this is where we kind of have to apply what we are learning a little differently. When you call the bank that you know, or whatever it is, the business or something, they may ask you questions to verify your identity. That's totally fine, right? Because what they're doing is they're doing this cybersecurity stuff on their end to make sure that you are who you say you are, right? So that's a little bit of a nuance, but it's like, that's okay because we know who we're talking to, right? We know we're talking to your bank or whatever. If you get a person, yes, that's another thing. Yeah. Well, once you make your way through hitting 0 a million times and get a person, you're good to go. Yes, ma'am.
I avoid that by not even picking up the phone if I do not know what the number is. And if they want to leave a message, I have an answering machine.
Yep.
And then if they leave a correct, message, that's fine, but if they don't,
Yes. So
that way you avoid all of that.
so again, I hope you guys have cleared your calendar out for the next 6 to 8 months because you're coming around Massachusetts and Rhode Island. So basically, that's a great approach because the other thing that's beneficial here, and we kind of go over robocalls a little bit at the end, but the more you engage, so there's two different ways to think about it. If you're like emailing back and forth with the fraudster, that's a problem just in the short term because they could trick you and you might give up information you don't want to do. But in the long term, the less you answer the phone or whatever, more the phone, the less, we're going to go over the do not calls, things like that, but the less like attractive your number becomes because you aren't answering. We had one gentleman when I was first doing this who said like he would babysit his grandson or something, and if they called, he'd give the phone to the grandson or granddaughter, and they would just talk for like 30 minutes, just ragtime to the person on the other end, which is like personally very satisfying probably for some people, but unfortunately that makes you look like someone that's a target and it may enhance the amount of phone calls you get. So the less you answer the phone, you may start to see the number of calls go down a bit. So that's another benefit to not engaging with them. Okay, again, the other thing we want to cover here is that this kind of goes back into the spoofing component of it. When you kind of, like worst case scenario, you found yourself into one of these like bad areas, they're going to make this look legitimate. So when you're being asked to enter your information and it's going to look legitimate, so you have to be very, very careful when you're entering information into a website that it is what you think it is. Again, we already covered this. You don't want to reply or engage with the fraudster. Oh, yes, there's a question back there?
My daughter and her husband have a business in Whitman, and they have, the kind of office phones that you have with multiple lines.
Mm-hmm.
She got a phone call that said Rockland Trust, with a Rockland Trust phone number, an incoming call. When she answered the call, a man on the other end asked for the owner of the business. Now, they've done so much business with Rockland Trust that immediately raised a red flag with her, because they should have asked for her or him by name. So she, on a separate line, called the bank back. The bank had been hacked.
Oh, wow.
They had taken that phone number, which belonged to the bank, for the scam. So if she had identified herself, she would have given out personal information.
Mhm.
How do you protect yourself from legitimate businesses being hacked and then transferring the hack to you?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that's a very tough one. I've never heard of something like that before. I mean, I think it was again, I think maybe the benefit was that, I'm sorry, so it was your daughter or son? Your daughter at least had the wherewithal to know, oh, they should know who they're calling. I've done business with them forever. That's like a very advanced move by your daughter, but that's the type of kind of application of these types of lessons into the situation, right? So, you know, in the cases I provided, where it was like, you know, they kind of like blended charitable names together to make you think they were legitimate, and you kind of sussed it out that way. That's kind of a different approach where your daughter was able to use what she knew about the situation to apply. But that's,
Normally you would give your name. I mean, that was just the fact that it raised a red flag so quickly, it wouldn't with the average person.
yeah, no, it would. That's very sophisticated, and unfortunately, that's what we're dealing with. You know, like the fraud and scam that we're seeing is getting more and more sophisticated. We don't really know what like AI and things like that are going to do yet. We're still kind of, but that's
The other
another thing to.
I was gonna ask you, does
Yep.
Microsoft have an 800 number where you can actually talk to a human being?
No?
I don't know.
Is there any possibility of you finding out?
I could certainly look into it. I unfortunately work for Microsoft, but I think sometimes if you just Google like the company and customer service number,
You still get 'em.
you still make it. It's tough. I mean,
They want emails.
yeah,
My email was hacked twice. The first time Gadget Tech was able to straighten it out. The second time I got so pissed off, I went to AT, bought a cellular tablet to keep it separate. And
Yeah.
now my texts from my phone are showing up on my tablet with two separate phone numbers. And the original email isn't on either of them, so they got hacked, thank God. It's a different email, but
Yeah.
it's like, there's like no escape from these people.
yes. So that's
Yeah.
unfortunately that is the sad reality of it, is that it is kind
I
of
haven't been able to check an email on my original email address in September,
because you can't get into it or because of something else.
because I can't change the password because I can't get into it. So it's insane.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I've not heard of something like that, but
And how I know I've been hacked is because all I have to do is check my books on my Kindle, and if there's a million foreign language dictionaries or books from China, then I know I've been hacked. That's how I can always tell.
yeah,
If I go into my book section and they've downloaded all these books from foreign countries, then I know I've been hacked.
yeah,
But I never had this experience of an email or something that looked suspicious. They just
Huh.
somehow get into my phone or my tablet. How do you protect yourself from that? And Gadget Tech says, oh, they're on a fishing expedition, they didn't get anything from you.
yeah,
I said, right, so they punished me by downloading and taking all my storage.
yeah,
He goes, well, yeah, they kinda did that.
yeah.
But how do you fix that? How do you,
Well, I mean, sounds like you have a lot going on. So that, I don't know, I mean, geez, like, you'd almost have to kind of go piece by piece and go, unfortunately, company by company. So like the book issue, you'd almost have to go to like that company and change the password
well,
and
no,
it counts for
that's
that.
just in Kindle. So all I had to do was erase all the books.
Yep,
Because
but
there was never a password to get them in the first place. They were, in other words, when you go into your Kindle, you can download books for free,
yep,
okay? Or you can pay for them, okay?
yep,
And I've never paid for them, so somehow these books got downloaded. I didn't download them and I didn't pay for them, so,
yeah,
and I
but
don't have anything financial on the Kindle, nothing.
yeah, but do you have a login to get into it? You must somewhere.
No, just turn it on.
I don't know. We can chat after. This sounds like very involved,
The email
but
I do, I have to put
Yep.
in my,
yeah. No, let's once we get through this, let's chat afterwards because that seems like there's a lot going
I
on
don't
with
have any
that.
of that stuff with me.
That's okay. We'll try to see what we can figure out. Okay, the clicking links or buttons, we kind of covered that already. Now we want to spend a little bit of time talking about files and attachments because this actually may be somewhat tied into what we just heard about. Not necessarily that happened with her, but it's something that could be going on with that. So the thing we want, again, we want to think about this sort of strategically, right? So files and attachments aren't necessarily bad to have in your email. I get emails with files and attachments from work constantly throughout the day, right? It's really understanding what those files or attachments are and where they're coming from that is the key thing, right? So just because you get an email with an attachment on it doesn't mean you need to delete it right away. Like let's say, for example, you were at a party or you were at a cookout or whatever, and your friend or relative was there and they took a bunch of photos. They said, oh, I'm going to email you the photos. Okay, a day or two goes by, you see an email from their account, photos from the cookout. You see things, attachments that are, photo files. You're good to go, right? For the most, unless something really crazy's happened and we're at a different place. But those, like that type of situation, that's okay, right? If you get a random email from someone saying, download file, please, and you don't know who it is, you're not expecting it, that's the problem. And now the reason that's a problem is because sometimes those files and items can be infected with malware, spyware, or a virus, or things like that, which can allow folks to remotely control your device if they're downloaded. And that's when, I'm not saying that's what happened in this situation we heard about earlier, but that's the type of stuff that could lead to it, right? So they can give people remote control of your device. It can let people kind of cruise around and look at your files. Lots of bad things can happen with sort of these viruses and the way that they can take over your device or
But how does the virus get introduced?
it could be a multitude of ways. It could be through a file or something else, or it really depends. So that's why we need to be mindful of files and attachments as well, is because sometimes if you're not sure where they're from, they could have bad things set up with them to make your life miserable. Again, the main thing we want to talk about here is being skeptical. For example, if someone FaceTimes you wearing an old-time bandit mask, you should be worried about that guy. But just like the general idea that there's bad actors out there, unfortunately, that are looking to utilize technology to, get something for nothing and take money from folks and otherwise try to take their information. So we want to be just generally skeptical, which is good, but not, super negative, but skeptical. Again, we're kind of doing the summary here. We want to be reading our emails carefully, making sure they're from who they say they're from, looking up information on our own. That's a key tool and technique we can use. And then we want to spend a little bit of time about robocalls, right? So we talked about a little bit. People all know them. They come through. One thing that the companies, AT&T and others, have become more mindful of is trying to alert folks. There's like a spam risk, or telemarketer trying to provide more info about the calls that are coming in. Again, from like a human kind of nature standpoint, I think some of us have an we don't want to be missing out. What if someone needs us, or maybe it's an emergency and someone's trying to call me from the line? They're probably calling 911. No offense, but also, it's better to let it go to voicemail. If it's urgent, they'll leave you a message or they'll call back, right? And again, same idea. Spoofing, they've become more sophisticated with this, and that they're able to mask the number so when it pops up on your caller ID, it looks reasonable, right? It's like a 617-508 number, something like that, that looks like it's kind of in the, if you saw it coming up with all crazy numbers on it, 20 digits or something, you'd never answer it. But when it looks somewhat similar to your number, you're more likely to answer it because you think it's like a neighbor or someone else calling. Now, the last thing here, we did put the information down for the do not call registry. So it's, they did a very nice job with their website, full credit from us. It's www.donotcall.gov. So you can go on and you can register your phone numbers there. It's not necessarily going to be foolproof and stop every single call, but it will help hopefully reducing it. The other thing that's nice about this website is that you can actually, once you've registered your numbers, you can go back and check to make sure that it's gone through. So you can kind of check to make sure you filled it out correctly. You do have to give it about 30 days to make sure it gets into the system, but after the 31 days, you can go back in and make sure that your number is listed there, or the numbers that you put in were listed there.
Is that same as normal, normal Globo or something?
Yeah, that might be an app that
Oh,
people can install. This is more of a government service that you can do. Yeah. So the last thing we wanted to cover quickly is sort of the common scams that you're going to see. Like I said earlier, we're not going to go through every single scam that's coming up. We're trying to cover the main ones. Like, for example, The one that was really prominent was like the fast lane, like smart, like the transponder scam with the Mass Pike or whatever, where everyone's getting text messages saying, yeah, you're still getting, like saying there's something wrong with your account with Fastlane. So that's like the more recent one that popped up. I'm sure if I came back here in a year and did this again, or 6 months, there'd be a new one. But these are the ones we've kind of seen proliferate. So the grandparent scam, we talked about that earlier, where there's sort of that urgent call saying that the grandparent needs bail money, or is in a somehow, don't tell mom and dad, like I need you to just wire me this, $5,000 or whatever it is. That's obviously a huge problem because, again, trying to play off your emotions. Everyone wants to take care of their grandkids. And that really is sort of been a prominent one. The next one is sort of these, and this is particularly true during tax time, the IRS scam, Medicaid scams, Social Security scams, trying to pretend that they're the government. Again, for all of us, I used to work for the government, level of panic, the government's serious, we don't want to be in trouble, kind of that human emotion to try to make you more likely to give up information to make the problem go away, right? We do see some like police investigation scams where people call, again, just be mindful of that. And then the last one, like utility gift card scams, people call and say there's a problem with the utility bill, or that you need to get gift cards to pay things off. That's just not how things operate, right? Like that's a big time scam. And the problem with the gift cards is once they're out, they're gone, they're gone. So that kind of wraps things up for us.